What dirty little secret do you know about someone, but they don't know you know? Not really a dirty secret. But I walked into a person's house and heard them and their spouse getting it on in their bedroom across the house really loudly. I quietly backed out and closed the door and left. This is someone who'd asked me to do some work for them, and I've been in their house many times and they'd told me to come on in and work on it, and I thought they knew I was going to be there soon. I knocked and called out their name. But their lovemaking was louder than my announcement. I think I'll bring it up at their funeral because they're a bit older than me and their kids would get a good laugh about it. My 16-year-old goody two-shoes sister got caught having sex in the car. Twice. At midnight I got a call from a cop asking if I was her mother. Sensing something was up, I said yes. He loudly told me, "We found your daughter having sex with a boy in a car." Shocked. Irritated. But laughing at her misfortune. I drove 20 minutes to pick her ass up. I pulled up to the parking lot of an apartment complex and saw 3 police cars. Lights still on. Not how it goes on in our neighborhood on a Saturday night. Close bracket. Her boyfriend sat on the curb talking to one of 3 cops. But still waved when he saw me pull up. Cute. A very serious cop with eyebrow way too plucked brought my crying sister to the car. It was clear I wasn't our mom, since I'm just a few years older. But my cunning small talk convinced him to let me take her home instead of calling our mom again. Double quote. On the way back she was all too grateful for protecting her from my mother's unforgiving wrath. She doesn't know 6 months later and confessed that they'd been caught elsewhere last weekend. In conclusion, I'm the slickest coolest sister you could have, and she is forever my bitch. A colleague of mine is a convicted rapist. It is an office setting, so there are lots of women around who might feel uncomfortable around him. HR knew about the rap either in his employment application or in the background check, but decided not to tell the hiring manager and blessed the hiring. A couple of folks did a search online later only to discover there was a shitty ton of coverage in the local news about the events that led to drugging and raping a young woman. I know one of my co-workers once had a kid who died in a fire. She was really depressed and had said she'd had to repair fire damage on her house. Quick internet search revealed the tragedy. I'll never tell anyone. Don't think anyone else knows. My step-uncle had a son and his wife had a son from a previous marriage as well. They got together and there was a fire in their house. Master was downstairs and kids' bedrooms upstairs. Both of the young sons died. I'll never have split bedrooms ever. I know that one of my friends is cheating on her husband with at least 5 other guys. One of them is her husband's best friend. She does it for attention. And to see if she is still attractive. She's 23. Jesus. That's desperation. I have a very similar story. I know of a woman who was married. Had sex with at least 1 other person. Got divorced. Had sex with me, 2 of my buddies and a co-worker of mine. Then was hanging out with 2 other people who I can only surmise she had sex with. I only have rumors though. Then she got married to a different co-worker of hers. Then not too very long ago, I literally witnessed her have sex with a 3rd co-worker of mine while at a party. There's a whole lot of Eskimo bros here. Oh yeah. She's pregnant now. My aunt had a baby boy when she was a teen. To this day, my grandparents are not aware of their first grandson's existence and still believe I am their first grandchild. The only other person she told was her sister, my mom. I only know because my mom told me. Where's the child now? When I was in 1st grade, my friend's brother in 4th grade wanted us to tie him up and embarrass him. We thought it was funny and played along. It was nothing sexual for us. But I remember his boner and wondering how it just stood up like that. But other than that, I didn't think much of that incident. Sometime during HS, I remembered all of a sudden and had a holy shit moment. Now we're older and we're friends. He probably thinks that I completely forgot about that incident, or maybe he forgot himself because there's no way he could act so naturally towards me otherwise. If I tell him now, he would just die of embarrassment. My dad took my mom to an intimate French restaurant one year about an hour from home on a Tuesday night since it was their anniversary. In walks a married co-worker with the co-worker's, not my dad's, secretary. The guy didn't see my dad, but my dad was pissed. My dad would use this as a lesson to us kids. He'd tell us that you never know who sees you doing something wrong, so be honest, ethical and decent. Had a friend middle school who legitimately had a crush on SpongeBob SquarePants. She let me use her computer a couple of times and I snooped through her shit and found her stash of self-insert SpongeBob fanfiction. Found a couple of NSFW drawings as well. I couldn't really judge, I've had my fair share of animated crushes. But it was still a bizarre experience. My brother started the fire in our backyard that destroyed half the property and my dad's whole shed full of tools. The fire was centered around the very spot my brother had been sneaking out back at night to smoke. And he would always put the cigs out on the dry pile of logs stacked right next to him. I saw him out there every night cause my window pointed to the backyard. And I was planning to use the information for leverage to get him to take me to the mess up on Halo 2 launch night. But after the fire I kept my mouth shut. I could tell he felt guilty enough about it since he spent the whole week after helping my dad clean up the damage and repair what they could. I still got Halo 2 at midnight. So it had a happy ending. My neighbor is having an affair. She and her husband leave for work every morning and she comes back with another dude around lunchtime about twice a week. I don't think she knows I work from home and realizes how big their picture windows really are. Update, plus Ninja Grammar edit. RIP my inbox and all that. This blew up way past anything I imagined and I've gotten hundreds of responses. The majority of you are suggesting I tell the husband in some anonymous way. Although there is a significant minority with good reasons to mind my own business. I do not know them at all. They don't have kids. And for all I know the guy has a cuckold fetish and he knows what's happening. I'm interested in the situation because of how divisive it is and as a morality ethics problem to consider. At first I thought, man, that sucks for that guy. Then I perused your account and realized you live near me. Hopefully this isn't in Street Johns. I have big picture windows. Edit. Shit. And I know my neighbor, who I've only met a few times, is in the IT field. Which you seem to be. I know that one of my close colleagues' husband, killed himself many years ago. No one at work knows. I don't dare tell a soul. Now her current partner has been diagnosed with cancer. After learning that information, I understand why she has the demeanor that she has. I secretly have a really big soft spot for her. She is a remarkably strong woman. Old friend of mine's husband cheats on her at least twice a week. Says he is getting called out on a job or some such. Only reason I know is they asked me to work on their shared laptop. I opened the existing browser window and it was an online dating site that had his profile. I snooped and saw messages between him and another woman about him leaving that night to go see her. Him also saying that they have to keep it quiet lest his wife finds out. I immediately told her and showed her the page. She broke down and didn't talk to him for a couple of days. After a while she just accepted it and decided to not bring it up and to stay with him. He still has no clue that both of us know. My mom has a sort of flexible relationship with the truth. She's always been a big fan of massaging the facts to achieve the best possible outcome. Or reinterpreting things so a situation looks as good as it can. My late father accused her once of being a compulsive liar. But I don't know if I'd go that far. I have caught her out on a couple of tall tales. Though. Specifically, when I was much younger. I eavesdropped on a conversation she was having during a bridge game where she cheerfully admitted to everyone else there that she'd almost killed herself at one point. Due to a depressive fit. When I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. She'd gotten as far as writing a suicide note before a friend of hers talked her out of it. I have no reason to doubt the veracity of the story except that, as above, I have to question everything she says. And I doubt I'll ever bring it up to her. Oh, I just thought of a great one. It's a karma story. 2. My ex was an all-around douche. I left him shortly after we married. He was in the military. I had met my now husband right at the tail end of the divorce and would rant to him about all the crap my ex would do and how I wanted to blackmail him and screw him over, etc. My husband convinced me to just walk away clean and let karma do its thing. Fast forward a few years and I'm enlisting in the army. I'm standing at the desk talking to the lady about my paperwork and she asks if my last name is Smith. I say, no. That was my ex's name and we divorced years ago. This lady bursts out laughing and proceeds to tell me and everyone else in the office that my ex never reported to the military that we divorced, and therefore picked up extra pay for being married until he split from the service, about 24 months. She flagged it in the system and he will owe the government back pay on about $25,000 when the paperwork catches up to him. As far as I know, he has no clue. This guy is terrible with money and saving. So this amount of debt will totally screw him over. My husband said, "See? Karma." Double quote. A guy who was my best friend had an affair with my co-worker. They are both male and we were living in one of those small towns where they couldn't possibly have been in the open about their orientation. Which was really sad. I happened to see the other guy leave my friend's place through a side door, looking around furtively, and when I went to my friend's place, all the blinds were closed and he looked really guilty. I put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly but left it alone. I figured if he wanted me to know he would tell me, but I always felt so bad for both of them to hide who they were. Eventually they each moved away and I lost touch, but I always hoped that they both found happiness in a more tolerant environment. My boss's father murdered his first wife. The second wife, my boss's mother, and he, the boss, have no idea. The father died about 20 years ago and took the secret with him. He had been married for about a year to a woman, then got drunk and bashed her to death with a hammer. Then he called the cops and told them she fell and hit her head on a pipe. They found his bloody clothes and a hammer in the closet. He did 15 years of his sentence, then got out on good behavior. He moved to another state, mine, remarried and started over with a new family. They have no idea about his past. How'd you find out? I had mentioned something about my ancestry, and he said he didn't know anything at all about his father's family. Said they were all dead by the time he grew up. So I looked into it when I got home. He has a fairly unusual name, and I knew the full name of his father. Not a lot invested in research. And then the newspaper articles popped up. I know it's his father. Not only because of the name, but there was a full photograph of the guy. And we have that photo hanging in our building. My dad tried to cheat on his wife by rekindling an old flame via Facebook. I kiboshed it by telling the woman what I knew and that I'd tell her husband if she didn't cut contact with my dad. She blocked him immediately. He was all bummed for the next week. Moral? Don't leave your Facebook logged in. Edit. I have no idea how many times he has cheated on his wife. I only know what I've caught. That's why the moral isn't don't cheat on your spouse. She's not a good person either, but cheaters piss me off, so when I had the chance to stop it, I did. My old boss was an absolute bitch. I found a new job and quit my old one, thinking I'd never have to talk to her again. Tax time rolls around and I had to get a certificate from her. She wouldn't reply to my messages or pick up my phone calls. I couldn't go into my old work and see her because it had shut down. I needed the certificate to lodge my tax return. I decided to lodge a complaint with the tax office because it's illegal to not issue staff with group certificates. And I won't lie, I was still a bit salty from how she treated me before I quit, so any chance to get her in trouble, I'll take. When I went to Google her name to find out her business number, multiple news articles came up. Turns out a few years prior, she scammed the government of 70 grand. She claimed she was a single parent of 3 kids for over 5 years when really she was living with her partner, working for his successful company. I continued to scroll Google and found many reviews of the cafe I used to work at, all stating not to buy from this cafe because the owner scammed the community. The whole time I worked for her, I never knew. Pretty funny considering she would comment on welfare bludgers quite regularly at work. I remember that I was at my friend's house and I wake up to a sound like FWUMP FWUMP FWUMP. I look down to see that he was face down, humping the ground in his sleep. I was afraid to get up out of the fear that I would wake him, so I waited for an hour and a half with the sound of FWUMP FWUMP FWUMP. Sweet Jesus. As for the secret he doesn't know about me is that one time we were sleeping in a bunk bed. I was masturbating. No one knows. Except for now. Not exactly dirty. But my friend's reputation at school would probably be ruined if this came out. One of my closest friends is completely fake. He has lied about fluently speaking a different language and lied about being born in a fascinating foreign country. I'm pretty sure 90% of the stories he tells me about himself are completely fake and are only made to make himself look cooler. He has lied for years to try to make himself unique and get more attention from girls and people in general. There was this one time I also caught him blatantly picking his nose in the middle of class and trying to hide it. That too. My ex-husband was fired from a job because he made a massive mistake. He fixed someone's truck, but put it back together wrong. So when that guy was driving down the interstate, his whole tire fell off, and he almost crashed. I don't know if he even knows. I think they told him he was too slow or something. I found out from a friend who worked at the shop, who had got my ex-husband his job. I posted this story in a couple other threads, but it seems appropriate here as well. The president of our company held a Christmas party at his house. My manager was there and brought his wife. As the night was winding down, his wife was absolutely plastered. She wasn't the happy-go-lucky cheerful kind of drunk, nor a particularly angry or at all emotional kind. She was the kind of drunk that sat by themselves and braced a hand on any nearby object to maintain balance while slow blinking with a gently wobbling head. She motioned her husband over a couple times and whispered something in his ear. And he looked frustrated as he mouthed words I couldn't hear and went back to mingling. My brother and dad both went to rehab for alcoholism, so I was fairly confident from her mannerisms and his reaction that she had a legitimate alcohol problem. Fast forward a month or so and my manager asks me for the recipe of something I brought to a company potluck a while back. I email it to him and get a strange email back with the text, "I'll meet you there at some time I don't remember," with an address. I looked up the address and found it belonged to a nearby rehab clinic. I responded to the email with, "Think you meant to send this email to someone else," and he responded with wrong address. 2. Obviously he was covering his tracks in case I looked it up. But I never said anything to him or any of my co-workers about it. My manager's a cool guy and having a family member with alcohol problems sucks. So I figured it would be best to keep the exchange between us and feign ignorance. I was at a party with one of my employees and her husband. She begins giving her husband's best friend tea about his part in a three-way between another mutual friend and a well-known barfly. I notice, out of the corner of my eye, her husband make himself small and quickly step away to find himself a new conversation. Turns out the three-way was actually his best friend, the barfly, and him. Also turns out pretty much the entire town, small town, knew. With the exception of my employee, his wife, who continually beats that dead horse to razz her husband's friends. My mother told me my biological father died 2 weeks after I turned 18. And that he was an auto mechanic, which I love to do. He visited me twice in my life. I don't have the balls to tell my dad that I'm not his biological son. I feel like it would tear him apart. Plus he acted like a father to me in my opinion. Edit. Since everyone thinks my mother is a whore, or a SLT, allow me to clarify. My dad cheated on my mother more times. For my mother it was just one guy, biological father, but with my dad I saw him with 2 different women, who knows? Maybe he slept with more women that I never got a chance to see? When my dad and mom were still married. I was about 5-8 years old when I witnessed this. They are both now in different healthy relationships with their significant others. I'm happy for both of them. And I visit both of them as much as I can. My dad has had multiple affairs over the past 10 years. And I'm the only one in our family who knows. He does a lot of international business for work. And a few years ago I became suspicious of how he spends his time. So I got access to his email and phone records and found out about 3 long-term mistresses spanning a few years time period. All outside the US. I wanted to tell my mom. But I knew it would absolutely crush her. And despite his infidelity, he's always been a good provider father for us. And this information would have completely torn the family apart and left my mom in ruins. I never confronted him about it. And from what I can gather he had a change of heart and completely stopped about 2 years ago. But to this day I still sometimes wonder whether or not I did the right thing by not saying anything. Around 2000-2001. My roommate at the time used to take pictures of him and his girlfriend F-King and store them in his desk. This was way before everyone had phones or digital cameras. She's a very proper girl. And has always dressed conservatively. And gave off a vibe of being sort of quiet and boring. They have been married for about 12 years now with 2 kids. And is very much the super mom who's on the PTA. Kids Soccer League board of directors. Teaches Sunday school. Etc. The pictures were of her wearing a ball gag and him F-king her in the ass. While others of her with a huge black dildo in her mouth and a butt plug in. Lots of facials too. My friend would be shocked if he knew I saw these. And his wife would probably have a heart attack. I know my ex-wife cheated on her ex by sucking off the tour van driver when she was on vacation in Europe. Update. Just came back to see all the questions. I guess I should have said former I am a widower. After she died I was going through her things and I hesitated to read her personal journals, but we have a son together and I was trying to figure out which things might be good to keep for him to see, like a journal she kept when she was a kid of a great camping adventure she went on with her family, and which ones to burn, like the trip to Europe obviously, so that our son never saw them if something happened to me. Mostly what I learned is that she struggled a lot through her life trying to connect with men and with her own parents. She carried a lot of anger around and felt emotionally abused by the men in her life. She was also a free spirit who had amazing adventures. And some not so amazing adventures. She was like Jenny from Forrest Gump with some. But not nearly as many. Drugs. She was done experimenting by the time we got together. And no, she did not die from AIDS, since I know someone will ask. I also learned she did not feel that way about me. I was the one, based on her journals, that saved her and made her feel whole. The story about her trip to Europe does not surprise me. And our relationship was not perfect, and I guess that's all I have to say about that. When I was 19, I got into a fight with a junkie. Long story. He broke into a friend's house stealing stuff. And we tried to get it back peacefully. It didn't work out. He was injured in the fight. And tried to sue me. He lied under oath in court claiming the entire medical bill, which was actually covered by his insurance. And the DA settled on me paying his $350 medical bill copay. Then threw the case out. He overdosed and died the following weekend of that court date on $350 worth of Xanax. Pretty much everybody on one side of my family, grandma, cousins, etc., are all into some kind of BDSM. Some of them have custom furniture for it. The cousins would probably not like it if they knew I know. But I'm pretty sure grandma would not give a single flying fuck. Or maybe she would. She has a sex swing. My dad is the one who told me. And I completely believe him. I really don't want to know if he shares the interest.